Hi, you've successfully gotten through half of the therapy course dedicated to procrastination. You can already analyze how you allocate your time. You can make a schedule based on the Eisenhower matrix and time batching, and you can better understand your thoughts. Well done. There are a lot more interesting things ahead of you. So let's go. In the last session, we talked about automatic thoughts and tried to identify them. But where do automatic thoughts come from? What makes people perceive the same situation completely differently? Today, we'll talk about core and intermediate beliefs, a deeper layer of the psyche which serves as the basis for our automatic thoughts. From childhood, people form beliefs about themselves, those around them, and the world in general. Core beliefs are attitudes that are so deep and fundamental that people are often unable to clearly express them in words and even simply be aware of them. For example, someone might think they aren't going to cope with a particular task. Maybe behind this thought is the core belief that I'm not capable of anything. For some, this belief might be inactive under calm circumstances, but it may awaken in a stressful situation. When a core belief awakens, the person interprets everything that happens through the prism of this belief, even if, from the point of view of common sense, this interpretation is clearly wrong. In situations like this, people often only pay attention to information that confirms their belief and ignore or dismiss anything that contradicts it. For instance, a student constantly puts off reading recommended scientific literature. They think they won't be able to make sense of these scientific texts as they're not capable of anything. In thinking like this and deciding to put off reading the texts, the student doesn't take into consideration that even smart people can't always make sense of unfamiliar material from the first time that they read it. The student also doesn't take into account the possibility that the author may not have set out the material coherently enough. What's more, they forget that they have already encountered complicated scientific texts before, and in large volumes, and they somehow coped successfully as a result. Influenced by the belief of his own worthlessness, this person automatically views the situation in a negative way, and he blames himself for an imaginary failure that hasn't even happened yet. Intermediate beliefs form on the basis of core beliefs. These incorporate attitudes, rules, and assumptions. Let's look at the example of the core belief, I'm not capable of anything. The following intermediate beliefs might be formed on its basis. The attitude might sound something like, how terrible it is to be incapable of anything. The rule might sound like, I have to constantly work hard. And the assumption will be something like, if I work hard, maybe I can achieve what other people attain without much effort. These intermediate beliefs influence your perception of the situation, and your perception determines your way of thinking. Then, thoughts influence emotions, and emotions become a motive for behavior. So, how do people cope with their negative beliefs? Well, they develop behavioral strategies that are meant to compensate for their shortcomings, which at times are only imaginary. For example, people with a core belief, I'm not capable of anything, might put excessive effort into any job, exercise increased vigilance with regard to their disadvantages and failures, and not turn to anyone for help, because asking for help might reveal their ineptitude to others. This is quite painful. Interestingly enough, completely opposite behaviors can be chosen based on the same core belief. For example, people with the belief I'm not capable of anything might choose the following way to behave. They won't persevere in their work, they will have diminished goals, they won't prepare enough for important events, and they will pin too much hope on help from others. So, why does this happen? It's because, given the same belief in their own inability, they cannot accept that if I work hard, I'll succeed. But instead, they think, if my goals are small, I'll be highly likely to achieve them. And even if I don't, I'll have less to lose. Or they might think something like, if I take it easy and end up failing, then people will think that it happened only because of lack of effort and not because I'm worthless. But a person like this will procrastinate in either case. Why is that? As we said back in the first session, the answer lies in perfectionism. It manifests itself in attempting to attain perfection, concentrating on details, and ignoring time limits. Perfectionism is always linked to a fear of potential imperfection. It can happen that perfectionists intentionally put off solving tasks until the very last minute, and they work in the last few hours before the deadline, increasing pressure on themselves by doing so. That's because some perfectionists are consciously or unconsciously convinced that the quality of their work depends on external pressure, and the higher the pressure, the better the result. Perfectionism can be addressed to yourself. This is striving for the ideal. It can also be directed at others, which means elevated expectations from those around you. Perfectionism can additionally be addressed at the world in general, through the belief that everything in the world should be right. Because they're striving for the ideal, a perfectionist finds it difficult to show the world the real them. It's really hard for a perfectionist to be sincere with the world. They procrastinate because they think that they will be judged based on their actions. The perfectionist motto may sound something like, better never, but perfect, than now and imperfect. There is even the concept of perfection paralysis, when a person cannot start a task due to the fear that they're not going to be able to complete it ideally. In other words, a perfectionist is super motivated, and this paralyzes them. Although in psychology, it has been proven on numerous occasions that the best results are achieved with a medium intensity of motivation, whereas effectiveness is equally low when motivation is either weak or too strong. So procrastination is built on perfectionism. But where does it come from? Perfectionism is based on the cognitive bias of shoulds. That is, we procrastinate because we're pressured by the feeling that we should do something and not when we actually desire to do it. We don't want to do it, we have to. But we're so used to wanting what we need to want, going for targets others set for us, that we wonder why we always never stick to our New Year's resolutions. Maybe these resolutions were never linked to our actual desires, but dictated by stereotypes and the demands of society. A perfectionist is constantly stressed, but because they procrastinate, they do not achieve what they want to. Or if they do achieve it, it is the price of getting burned out and sick because they're working as if under the lash. Addictions can end up being the payback for the pressure and restrictions that the perfectionist creates for himself. In order to relax at least a little, some people will eat a piece of chocolate, others will have a drink. And this is the price of perfectionism. If you notice I should, he should, and other things like this among your thoughts, pay attention to these instances of shoulds. There are other common rules linked to procrastination. You can only do everything if you're in good shape. You can only start something when you have everything you need for it. If there's not enough time, it's better not to start. Any task needs to be completely finished. I can only work if I'm inspired and in a good mood. You shouldn't do boring work. First, you need to finish everything else. If there's time, then you can wait. I work better when there's already no way out, so I'll leave it until the very last minute. Have you noticed signs of perfectionism and shoulds in yourself? Not to worry, working with them is what this course aims to do. The next session is dedicated to softening perfectionism and the shoulds. With the help of the exercise following this session, you will be able to identify your own intermediate and core beliefs.